How's it going, guys? It's See It Fed. My name's Connor and welcome back to See It Fed TV. Now this video is a little bit different. I'm actually working on a project for my world religions class. The topic I decided to talk about was on Hinduism and the role of women. Now I decided to pick this because women roles have been debated in the United States for years now, for many years. So I decided to look at the Hinduism view on women. So that being said, here are some background about women roles in Hinduism. Check it out. In the Hindu society, the role of women were classified in three specific categories: the role of a mother, the role of a virgin/wife, the role of a goddess. For the role of goddess, the Hindu society believed that women were classified into two spiritual and societal roles: benevolent role, which they bring fortune and prosperity into their household, or malevolent, which is they bring misfortune and turmoil to the household. Because of the fear of either being benevolent or being malevolent, they decided to keep the women's role stagnant and leave them as being either just a wife or a mother or a keeper of the household, as the men deal with the most important things in their society. The role of a virgin, or the role as a wife, they established the laws of Manu, which is how a woman should behave and function in the Hindu society as they follow the lead of their husbands. Now this is also during the time of the muscular nationalism, which is they uplift male dominance and moral fortitude as the men focus on the purity of women, aka keeping them a virgin. The most important thing when it comes to the role of women as a wife is the marriage part. And they take marriage very seriously in the Hindu culture, and they believe in the idea of Parody, hopefully I said that correctly, which pretty much is nature, is that women need their husbands, and women are classified as being like the soil, and the men would plant the seed for them to grow, aka that they would uplift them and they would craft them so that they would be pure in their life and they would be able to pass down the generation. Another term that they use in marriage is called adarhatini. Hopefully I said that right. I probably said that wrong. However, women were seen as half men, and they need their husband to make them whole. And it goes back to the religious view of women being the goddess of purity, and they say once the marriage is complete, it cannot be broken. And one of the most important things that comes to a marriage is the dowry, which is something that the bridegroom needs that are passed down from their father so that they can make both the marriage complete. It's kind of like the father passing down the acceptance of the marriage to the woman so that the husband can take her and is now officially your woman. And also this could result in domestic violence, murder, and suicide, because this idea has been corrupted for the past few years, and it's led to possible mental illness in women due to the fact of this dowry has been corrupted during some time. However, as the years go by, the role of women has changed over time to be less restrictive. For example, they're now able to go to school and learn about Hindu culture and their language. And one big thing is the marriage and the age factor of when women should get married. And they now added a thing where girls can marry after their puberty period, and widows can also be remarried. But the one big major change in the Hindu society is that they've had their first female guru, which usually is not accepted during that because the man would usually take that role, but they had their first female guru, which has changed society significantly. So there you have it. There was some background on the women roles in Hinduism. Now, for the experience, I decided to choose a podcast because I wanted to get a look on a one-on-one, interview and podcast and view on what women in that culture view their roles and what their society felt. I found one from BBC Radio, and I will share with you some of the details about what they were talking about. But I decided to go through some research, some podcasts on Hinduism and on women's roles in general. It was a little hard, not too much, because it was a little bit of a specific kind of thing, but I was able to find it, and it was a really, really good podcast. And the guy who interviewed them for BBC Radio did a really good job of interviewing these people from that culture, and I'm pretty sure that they answered the questions really well, and they talked about it really well for me to understand. They even talked about some of the history about the goddesses and how it applies with the women roles, and how the women roles back then affect their society today as adults. So why don't you check out the details. So this interview was conducted by Ernie Ray from BBC Radio to talk about the role of women in Hinduism. And the guests he had were Atri Sen, lecturer in contemporary religion and conflict at Manchester University, Sanaka Rishi Das, a director of Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies, and Padme Angal, I believe I said that right. Hopefully I did. Senior lecturer in history at Cardiff University. Now, during this interview, they discussed the most important things about the role of women and how their roles are passive and almost a submissive figure as they work around the house as wives and mothers, and they most show the true dedication and loyalty to their husbands. That's like a big thing. How women are supposed to have full and complete loyalty, almost like worship their husband. That is their most important thing in Hindu society. And they gave the example of the story of Ram and Sita, which was a Hindu epic, and about how Ram was the big conqueror, the big strong person in the Hindu society, and Sita was a love interest who was passive and needed to be rescued. So that kind of thing was a part of that society they were addressing, how women roles are very passive, and how the role of goddesses has been brought down a little bit because they want women to be passive. But in reality, the goddesses are actually very, very strong, and that's how they try to view women in that society. And the interviewers gave examples of their lives and how they had to follow these strict rules in the Hindu society, and they're asked how they would treat their children when they're adults, and the fact that they sometimes fall into that same kind of feel, same kind of structure, and that status, because it was kind of like taught to them. It was kind of like a part of society, that women had to follow these rules, these original rules in society, even though there had been some changes around the thing. And they also mentioned about the issues of dowry, which is like the passing down of I think finances that the dad brings to the families to complete the marriage. And there's been some abuse because it's been corrupted for some time, and it leads to women having depression, suicide, and stuff like that. And they talk a lot about that in the interview, about how the most important thing, women roles have become very passive. Like, they have to be, the mother, the pure virgin, the submissive servant of the husband, because the husband is the person that guides the household, leader of society, and they need to follow that. And now you see that some have changed along the road, but that was mostly what they were talking about in that interview. So looking back at that interview, it was actually kind of similar to what my literature review said about the role of women and how they're mostly very passive, mostly a role of being a mother, a wife, and being the breeder of new generation of children, new generation of the Hindu society, those kinds of things. They brought that up. They gave like the example of the Hindu goddesses, which I also touched upon as well. So I would say my first impression of the role of women in Hinduism, I didn't know much about it. I know it was completely different of how United States women society were. I think like earlier down it was kind of the same, how women's roles were just very a passive thing. They didn't have a lot to do, but then we uplifted the fact that women are equal to men, and the fact that women should have jobs and can do anything a man can do. We uplifted that. The Hindu society kind of stays the same. Probably the only reason why is because they feel that it's a religious thing, and they don't want to break that religious culture, so they stick to that. But we have seen some changes along the road, and there's still more time for them to change. That it's hard, it's hard to change a society from just like one thing. It takes years and years and years to process. But I would say my literature review and this experience was kind of the same. There's a passive experience, passive work style, and anything like that. So yeah. So thank you guys for joining me in this this little small lecture. I wouldn't even call it a lecture. A small little thing on women's roles in Hindu society. If you have anything you want to add, make sure you comment down below about anything you know about the Hindu society and on the role of women. If you want to add more, or if you want to discuss more about stuff, make sure you comment down below to talk about any experiences. If you're part of a Hindu society and you want to talk about your experiences in the Hindu society as a woman, or even as just a regular person in Hindu society, comment down below and tell me your experience. I would really like to know. And so thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to CFN TV, and we'll see you next time. Peace.